Hey there, welcome to Module 4.5, Social Media Outreach. And this is a pretty in-depth video. I'll get into an actual campaign you could run that will get your golden prospects' attention. And you should run this campaign. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to run it on Twitter, but you should run this campaign before you offer any help to your golden prospect. And that's just something that it's really important. A lot of things take place before you actually offer any help. So let's get into that. Oh, well, first let me say that one of the biggest problems with social media outreach is the fact that sometimes you end up in an endless, unproductive loop. I have been caught in that loop more times than I care to admit. I'm still caught in that loop with some prospects. What's the loop? You have an ongoing conversation with him or her online that never leads to a link or you ever asking anything. It's how you and the guys that are listening to this course and watching the course rather, it's how you get into the friend zone. You don't want to get into the friend zone with your golden prospects. Well, you do. You want to become friends, but you also want to get a link and you want to get endorsements and referrals. So you got to be more than a friend. So you're looking for a relationship. So one of the problems with social media outreach is awfully easy to get nervous to go in to ask for something when that person is an authority in your industry. And it could have a lot to do with how you feel about yourself, what you feel about your offering, whether or not you have confidence. And there's a lot of factors that really come into play with how well you're able to go out and get what you want. And that's what this endless loop is. If you start doing the social outreach, you may become very good friends with all your link outreaches, but if you never ask for anything, you're going to fail and you're not going to get any links. And sooner or later, you're not going to like your golden prospects anymore and seeing their tweets on Twitter, and you'll end up unfollowing them or even blocking them. But don't fall into that zone. You don't want to fall into that friend zone. You want to fall into you want to be friends with benefits, or even a long-term relationship. That would be nice with your golden prospects. Of course, I'm talking platonic. But you don't want to end up in that endless loop, and I fall into that loop a lot. I'm in that loop with Joost de Valk, where I want to link from him in the worst way to my own site, and I've been talking to him probably for a year on social media now, and I'm still caught in that loop. But if you follow the plan that I'm about to share with you in this video, you'll never get caught in that loop, ever. All right, let's do it. How do I avoid the endless loop, or the unproductive endless loop? Well, it's a little operation. I just came up with the name of it. I never called it anything before, but I'm calling it, from this moment forward, Operation Humble Introduction. All right. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, where I would be shy or have social anxiety when I'm in groups of people. And that's why a lot of people in the industry have never seen me at a convention. Is because I don't go to conventions. Even riding in the airplane kind of bugs me, not because I'm afraid of flying, but because I don't like being so close to so many people. I don't know. It's weird. And it's, I don't know, is that agoraphobia? I don't know. But it's, I was like, whoa, it's different people are here. But anyway, I have a hard time meeting new people and getting into the conversation that's going. So if I go to I'll give you a perfect example, going to one of the networking meetings at the local chamber of commerce, and everybody's there, and they're established and they know each other, and it's my first time there. And I had a really hard time getting into the conversations with the people there. It's because I felt self-conscious. And I was an internet marketer. What was I doing there? And people would ask me what I would do. I say, well, we have 10,000 clients, and 5,000 of them have page one rankings already. And they're like, what is that? Then they would go on to somebody else, because it usually turned out I was bragging about myself. I was trying to give my accomplishments to make up for the maybe the low self-esteem I was feeling at the meeting because I didn't know who to talk to. So I kind of overcompensated with bragging. But I was just trying to impress them, say, hey, I'm somebody of worth to talk to, so please come talk to me. So it was just messed up, and it was just social, I'll just call it social uncomfortability. But online, that doesn't have to be the case. Now, you may feel nervous about reaching out to your golden prospect, a lot like I am with Joost de Valk, the owner of Joost. He has the #1 plugin for WordPress for SEO. It's just the best plugin ever, and his premium plugin just rocks. So if he were to give me an endorsement, it would be huge. And so I'm a little nervous about reaching out to him. If it were a client, I would have already had the link or not had the link, and I wouldn't still have him on my prospect base. So I'm not immune to getting into those unproductive loops. All right, so let me talk about Operation Humble Introduction. Where'd I get the name? I got it from watching the season 1 of Marco Polo on Netflix. There's a scene when Marco Polo and his father and uncle meet Kublai Khan, which is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan, maybe his grandson. And he's sitting there on the throne, Khan is, in all his splendor. And these big doors open, and the 3 foreigners get to meet Kublai Khan. They don't, and what happened? Did they just walk right in down the hall and walk right up to the Khan? No, they had to bow, and then they had to crawl on their bellies across this great hall and inch closer and closer to the Khan. It was the only way they could approach the Khan, and then they did not speak to the Khan unless spoken to first, and they certainly did not make eye contact. So that was respect. And it was important for that respect to be shown, not only so they wouldn't get killed most likely, but so they could have influence in the court. And it wasn't that Khan needed that humility, but the people in the court needed that humility. They needed it because they were looking up to their Khan, and Khan was bigger than life. So it's important to the people around Khan more than it was important to Khan himself. And I obviously that's conjecture, and I have no idea whether or not maybe he loved it. But I don't think he did. I think he just did it because that would get embarrassing after a while. People having to crawl up to you. It would get embarrassing, it would seem. But it had to respect the office. And so that's why. So anyway, what does it have to do with link building? Operation Humble Introduction. You introduce yourself to your golden prospect with this campaign the same way that Marco Polo did in Netflix. and with humility. All right. What's the purpose of Operation Humble Introduction? Well, the purpose is simple. To introduce yourself to your golden prospects, and then to drive the conversation offline. And I got it singular here because you do one at a time, obviously. But the whole purpose of this mission is to get your golden prospect into an offline conversation. I guess it could be online too, but we'll get into that in a minute. That way, that's when you're going to talk to them about how you want to help him or her. All right, what's the timing? First of all, before you start helping your prospect, is you run this campaign before you start helping your prospect, because sometimes prospects just won't respond back. Either they don't like you or you didn't pass a sniff test. That's what I always think. Oh, you hated me. I didn't pass a sniff test. Oh, what am I going to do? But most likely they're just busy. And remember the filter I talked about. And it's amazing how effective that filter is in filtering out things we don't want to see, or that isn't particularly relevant to us at the particular moment it's presented to us. So we filter it out. So before you start helping your prospect, make sure you have his or her attention. Make sure they like you. All right. What else will this little campaign? I'll show you the sequence. It's a 15-day sequence. I say 2 to 3 weeks because you may miss a day like I do. And so it's 2 to 3 weeks long, but there's a 2-week regiment that if you follow it, day 1 do this, day 3 do this, you'll put yourself in a position where you'll be able to get into a real conversation with your golden prospect. All right, so before you start helping your prospect, it's important that you run this campaign because it'll warm him or her up to you. It'll let them make their mind up about who you are on their own. Remember, you can't tell them who you are. They're going to make their own. They're going to form their own opinion on who you are from their own investigation. They'll be checking your site out. That'll be checking your social media tweets out, maybe even checking your profile picture out. And if you have a logo there, they may just pass because a lot of spammers use their logo as their Twitter profile. So and if you have the wrong picture where you're trying to look like, and you kind of look like a hot shot, or if you're looking like you know it all, well, that might be a problem. That might turn them off. So there's a lot of things that have to take place in this 2 weeks before you even approach your golden prospect with your plan and how you want to help them. And so it's important. All right, that they make up their own mind about who you are. And if you follow the sequence by the letter, they're going to make their own mind up about who you are. And more chances than not, it'll be positive. All right, so this could take 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to talk to you about a Phoenix list. What happens if a golden prospect does not respond to you in the 2 to 3 weeks that it takes to run this campaign? Add them to your Phoenix list. The last thing you want to do is end up with about 400 golden prospects that aren't responding to you and 7 that are. And then you keep putting effort into reaching the 400, and you keep going on longer than 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. You're going to flood your feed, and it's going to look like garbage. And then when you share your golden prospects information, they're not going to like it as much because they'll see that you're doing it for dozens of other people. So thin out who you actually help by whether or not they're responding back to you. And the people that don't respond back to you, don't give up on them. Add them to your Phoenix list. What's a Phoenix list? It's like the phoenix that rose from the ashes to fly again. Just because a prospect is busy now doesn't mean that he or she won't be busy next month. And then if I start reaching out to him or her every month or every 2 months, probably every 2 months, and maybe replying to a tweet and giving it a compliment and then trying to get another appointment, you just get to a point where sooner or later you'll find it's worth your effort. So don't just delete the prospect, but don't just stay with the prospect if he or she doesn't respond to you in this campaign in the first 2 or 3 weeks. You just may have to add them to your Phoenix list. But enough will where you'll have plenty of work to do, trust me. All right, day 1, what do? You follow. This is for Twitter. You follow them, and that's easy enough. So day 1, you follow your golden prospect on Twitter. And you do nothing else. Don't like any of their tweets. Just get out, because they're going to say somebody followed you. And they may follow you back. More times than not, they won't, because they get a lot of people following them and keeping their Twitter follow feed, who they're following on Twitter, keeping that up to date is not one of their biggest priorities. So they'll probably, they won't follow you back at this point. It doesn't matter if they do or not follow you back. It doesn't matter at all. You'll see why in a minute. All right, day 3, add them to a public list. As you know, well, you may not know, but if you don't know, you can Google it. Twitter public list. Google how to set one up. It's really simple. What you want to do is set up a public list that you can add your golden prospect to. And if your golden prospects are link builders, you can put link building experts as the name of the list. And then you add your golden prospect to it. It's really easy to do. You can learn how to do that by Googling it. And when you add your golden prospect to it, they will be notified that, hey, Matt just added you to a public list called Link Building Experts. So now that's another introduction without me reaching out, without me doing anything else. First I followed them. Now they hear from me again. They get a notification that I added them to a public list. And the name of that public list was something that was I don't want to say flatters them, but it's something that respects their position in the industry. All right. Just like Kublai Khan needed to be respected on Netflix, your golden prospect should have earned your respect. And even if they haven't, you still show the respect because other people will be seeing this. And respect is a great selling tool. All right, now, day 5 is cool. Now, you like one of their posts, and then you reply to it. And this is the part that I had a hard time doing in public and doing my open networking gigs, or even going out to dinner with a lot of people. I have a hard time fitting in with other people's conversations. And I know I could just listen and get into the conversation, but I have a hard time talking about stuff that I don't care about. And I know it's a horrible habit. So so as I'm hearing stuff that I don't care about, I have to look like I'm not bored. Then I'm starting to think about, why am I looking like I'm not bored? And then that's what my mind's on the whole time the person's talking. And then when it comes time for me to talk, I just ram it right into my conversation, right into my wheelhouse. And that's how I would communicate with people and parties, and it was very cumbersome, and it wasn't very productive. But mainly it was because I really wasn't trying to brag. And I would talk about our SEO, all the successes we had, because I was networking. But I was trying to make up for my nervousness by sharing my accomplishments. So I wanted to show them I was worthy of having them come talk to me instead of just going to talk to them. So why am I saying all this? I overcompensated by going to these network meetings, by sharing my accomplishments. And in SEO, and to anybody that doesn't understand SEO, they wouldn't care. But for what we accomplished, it was huge. It was monumental. So I wanted to tell as many people about that as possible, and so I did at the meeting. And I had a real hard time getting anybody to talk to me. Now, what I like about Twitter is none of that matters. The same principles exist. You have to enter the conversation your prospect's already having. You don't interject your own conversation into the conversation, because it's rude. I know that now. Even though I wasn't doing it out of rudeness, to be rude. I was doing it because I wanted to talk, and I was socially inept. And so it took some doing and some learning. Luckily, if the longer you live, you learn a lot of cool lessons, and I learned how to be a lot more sociable. But so follow up with your Phoenix list every couple months. The people that don't respond to you, then cut them, and then don't waste your time every day on them. All right. And then you come down here, day 1, day 3, you add them to a public list. Day 5, you like a post and you reply to it. Joining a conversation your prospect is already in. It is so simple to do. And it's not interjecting with your ask. It's not talking about who you are. You're not trying to impress him or her with your genius. All you're doing is reaching out and like stepping into a room. There's a conversation going on, and there's an open chair. And what you do is you sit down at that open chair and listen to the conversation and enjoying the conversation to talk about the topic being discussed. So if your golden prospect is talking about the Super Bowl, you could reply and talk about the Super Bowl. It could be an aspect of the Super Bowl. If the Super Bowl had already passed, that was a great game. And then share some specifics on what you liked about it. But you can find other points of interest. So what's different about Twitter compared to a party is Twitter, you'll have the record of the last 5 years or however long they've been on Twitter of the conversations they had. So you can enter any one of those conversations. That's really cool. You shouldn't go back 5 years, but you could go back 6 months. Your prospect will still get a notification when you join back to when you reply to it. They will, and when you like it. So and they may at that point reply back to you, and that's what I want to talk to you about now. If they reply back to you, you want to reply right away with a sincere compliment, and this is where it gets. This is where word of warning. I'm not talking about flattery. Flattery is fake. Flattery is offensive to people. Flattery burns social capital. It doesn't generate it. A sincere compliment generates social capital. And remember, the whole thing you're trying to do is help your prospect make their mind up about you on their own in this 2 or 3 week period. So if your prospect responds back to your like and reply, you give them a compliment. And what do you compliment? It could be what you've been reading their books, you've been taking their courses, maybe you've been reading their blog posts. You can compliment their blog posts and their newsletter, their body of work, whatever it is that you're I want to say envious of, but whatever it is that you truly respect them for, because they're your golden prospect and they're big in your industry, so you should respect them. There has to be something you like about them, and find that and share a sincere compliment. And they will probably reply back, say, well, thank you. That means a lot to me. You leave it there. You don't go to your ask. Okay. So at that point, that conversation ends. And this was all on day 5. And the reply could have been, came back day 6. And the compliment and the thank you replying back could have been day 7. But then you keep going on. On day 9, you retweet one of their posts with a complimentary comment. So, can it be the same one as here? No. If they ignored you, well, you could. This is how I train our guys and gals. If prospect responds, reply back with a sincere compliment. They hear the compliment if they responded back. So, if the prospect did not respond back, then you can go ahead with this sincere compliment. But if they responded back, then you could then retweet the compliment again. So that's important. But maybe you can retweet the blog post, another blog post, or maybe you could retweet. So I guess whatever you retweet, whatever they're posting, obviously. So it could be if they're promoting their book, then you retweet something about how much you like their book. Retweet it and say, I read this book. It's great. I highly recommend it. It taught me to do this, this, and this. Wowza. Something like that. But it's just be careful that you're being genuine, I guess, is the main thing. And if you gave them a compliment about their newsletter, and then if they pitch their newsletter on their Twitter, then you can for sure retweet it, and then say by the way, I'm a member of the newsletter. It's great. I get all kinds of great information. So at this point, they may have received 2 compliments on you for the same thing. So that's okay, or just 1, and and it doesn't really matter. But they're spread out, so you get brownie points, and because you're not doing it all in one day, it all plays out real well. So we get to this point. All right. So day 9, you give the compliment. Day 14, it's simple. You recommend their product or service, and then you tag them in it. And I'm going to take just a little bit of time on this. Here, we complimented his or her service or book. Here, we complimented his book or her book. But here, we recommend it. There's a big difference. So, one compliment, recommendation. You just set yourself up as a referral source for that process, for your golden prospect. Now you're recommending their product. And at this point, it could be their moneymaker. If they have a service that you paid for, then recommend that. But whatever makes them the most money and they want to sell the most of, that's what you recommend. And it has to be something that you've purchased yourself, obviously. Or it's, let's back up. What if you don't have the budget? Because sometimes we have clients that just don't have the budget for buying anything from the prospects. In that case, what do you do if you don't have the budget? It's simple. You talk about their blog posts, or you talk about their newsletter, and you talk about their body of work, and then you recommend. So compliment, recommendation. That's where you're going to recommend their people to buy their book or their course or whatever it is. Okay, so there's a difference between compliments and recommendations, and you want to tag them in it. And I just read a book called The Tao of Twitter, and it's written by, let me get the name, Mark Schaefer. And it's a good book. It's it's Kindle Unlimited, so you can get it for free if you're a member of Kindle Unlimited. And I read it, and this is what I learned. When you're tagging somebody in it, and this now I was making this mistake on all my campaigns. when you tag your golden prospect and when under a product recommendation, or make sure that you put a period in front of their tag. So if you're tagging me, it'd be at Matt LeClaire. So instead of at Matt LeClaire, put the period in front of at Matt LeClaire. What will happen is at Matt. That was messing me up. At Matt LeClaire. What will happen is it's simple. It will allow your golden prospects followers to see your recommendation. It's them that are going to buy the book. Your followers aren't going to buy the book. Their followers aren't going to buy your followers aren't going to buy the course. It's his or her followers are going to buy the course. Maybe some of your followers will. And that's why it's important that you put the period in front of it too, because what will happen if you don't put the period in front of the tag, the only people that will see it will be the people who are friends, who are your followers, and who also follow your golden prospect. So if you have 5 people following you who are also following your golden prospect, and only 5 people, when you tag your golden prospect without putting the period in front of the tag, the only people that will see the recommendation will be 5 people. Those 5 people who are mutual friends of the both of you. So that's why you got to put a period in front of it. When you put the period in front of it, what happens is it goes out to their entire following list, sees it, and your following list sees it as well too.